The interview is going perfectly. I'm connecting with the manager, my answers are strong, and then it comes. That one question. So, Mark, what is your greatest weakness? And my mind just goes completely blank. I feel like anything I say is a trap.
And what do you usually say?
The classic, I'm a perfectionist. Or maybe, I care too much about my work. Something that sounds like a strength, but I can see it in their eyes. They've heard it 100 times. It feels dishonest.
Because it is. The problem isn't your answer, Mark. The problem is the question you think you're being asked.
What do you mean? They're asking about my weakness.
Are they? Most people think the goal is to find a weakness that isn't really a weakness, a clever trick. That's the first mistake. It assumes the interviewer is trying to trick you.
Isn't that what's happening? They're looking for a reason not to hire me.
That sounds logical, but it's not quite right. They are looking for a reason, but it's not the weakness itself. The weakness is just the opening. The real question they're asking is, are you self-aware, and what do you do about it?
Okay, I think I understand. Self-aware. But how do you show that? My perfectionist answer seems like an attempt to do that.
Let's look at that. People choose an answer like, I'm a perfectionist, because it feels safe. It presents a flaw that is secretly a benefit to the company. I work too hard. I'm too detail-oriented.
Right. Who wouldn't want an employee like that?
An experienced manager. Because that answer shows a fundamental lack of self-awareness. Or worse, it shows you're unwilling to be honest. It communicates that you are not comfortable with real imperfection. It suggests you will hide problems later.
So it backfires. The safe answer is actually the most dangerous.
Exactly. It quietly fails because it avoids the real question. The interviewer isn't listening for the flaw you name. They are listening for what comes next. A better way to think about it is this. The question is an invitation to be honest. They want to see if you can have a mature, professional conversation about a sensitive topic.
An invitation to be honest. That feels risky.
It is if you don't know how to frame it. But a truly impressive answer starts with being genuinely candid.
Okay. Let's say I decide to be candid. I choose a real weakness. For me, it's public speaking. My voice shakes, I lose my train of thought. It's not good. If I tell them that, they'll just imagine me failing in a big presentation. Why would they hire me?
That fear is completely normal. The belief is that if you admit a real weakness, you are giving them a clear reason to reject you. It makes you feel exposed.
It makes me feel vulnerable.
It does. And that's the moment of opportunity. Most candidates run away from that feeling. They hide it with a fake strength. But the strongest candidates step into it. They understand that a company isn't just hiring a set of existing skills. They're hiring a person's ability to grow and adapt.
So how does admitting I'm a bad public speaker show I can grow? It just shows I'm bad at something.
Because the weakness itself is not the main point of your story. It's only the beginning. The new way to think is this. The weakness is the context, but the action is the story. Your weakness for public speaking is Chapter 1. The interviewer wants to hear Chapter 2.
Chapter 2. What I'm doing about it.
Precisely. How do you manage it? For example, someone who fears public speaking could say, I know that public speaking is a key skill for growth in this role. Honestly, it's an area where I've had to be very intentional. A few years ago, I realized my nerves were holding me back.
Okay, that's the honest part, but it still sounds negative.
We're not finished. That's just setting the stage. Now, for Chapter 2, you show the system. You could continue. So I joined a local public speaking club to practice in a low-pressure environment. And for any major presentation at work, I have a clear process. I script my first 3 minutes word for word to get past the initial nerves. I also volunteer for smaller internal updates to get more practice. What have you just done?
I showed that I'm not just letting the weakness happen. I'm doing something to mitigate its impact.
You've done more than that. You've shown you can analyze a problem, create a plan, and execute it. Those are 3 high-level professional skills. The weakness was just a vehicle to demonstrate them. You've turned a negative into a story about responsibility and growth.
That makes sense. The story isn't I'm a bad speaker. The story is I'm the kind of person who actively solves my own professional challenges.
Exactly. The weakness is the past. The system is the present and the future.
Okay, but what if my weakness isn't something you can join a club for? For example, sometimes I'm not great at estimating how long a task will take. I can be too optimistic. I can't exactly fix that in a club.
This brings us to the third turning point, the belief that you need to have fixed your weakness. Many people think they need to tell a story with a perfect, happy ending. I used to be bad at this, but now I'm great.
Yes, that sounds like a good story to tell. It shows success.
But it can also sound unrealistic. Most of our core weaknesses aren't software bugs we can just patch and forget about. They are tendencies. They are part of our operating system. Claiming you've completely fixed a fundamental tendency can sound naive.
So what's the alternative? To say I'm still bad at it?
The alternative is to show a reliable system for managing it, not a one-time fix. It's about being proactive, not perfect. So for your time estimation problem, a proactive system sounds much more credible. You could say, I've learned that my initial instinct for project timelines can be optimistic. I have a tendency to focus on the best-case scenario.
Okay, there's the candid admission.
Now the system. To manage this, I've built a simple two-step process. First, I always build a project plan with input from at least one other team member. Their perspective helps ground my estimates in reality. Second, I add a 20% buffer to any timeline I propose myself. This system has made my forecasting much more accurate and reliable.
That's a concrete system. It's a tangible process, not just a vague promise to get better.
Exactly. It shows you're not just hoping to improve. You have an active, intelligent strategy in place. A manager hearing that doesn't think, oh, this person is bad at estimates. They think, this person understands their own patterns and has built a professional system to ensure quality. I can trust them.
This all sounds very good in theory, Sarah. It makes perfect sense here. But when I'm in a real interview, under pressure, isn't this whole story a bit long and complicated? What if they just hear the negative part, I'm bad at public speaking, and they stop listening? What if they don't have the patience for chapter 2?
That's a fair question. It's about confidence in your delivery. Think of it like a bridge. The first part of your answer, the weakness, is one side of the canyon. The second part, the system, is the other side. You cannot pause in the middle. You must deliver it as one complete thought.
One single idea.
Yes, the idea isn't the weakness. The idea is your response to it. You don't say, my weakness is X. Pause. You say, I'm actively working on X by doing Y and Z. The focus is immediately shifted from the problem to the solution. The interviewer's brain doesn't have time to dwell on the negative because you are already guiding them towards the positive, proactive story.
So the speed and the connection between the two parts are critical.
It's everything. This approach only fails if you sound apologetic or uncertain. If you state the weakness like a confession, you invite judgment. But if you state it like a fact, a simple starting point for a more interesting story about your growth, you command respect. It shows you're in control of your own development.
So it's a two-part signal. I'm putting it all together now. The first part, the weakness, shows I'm willing to be candid. It proves I have self-awareness.
Yes, it filters you out from all the candidates giving fake rehearsed answers.
And the second part, my system, shows I am proactive. It proves I take responsibility for that awareness.
And it must be a tangible system, not just a goal. I plan to get better is meaningless. I use a checklist and get a colleague to review my work is a system. One without the other is incomplete. Honesty without action is just a complaint. Action without honesty feels fake. Together, they create a picture of a mature, reliable professional.
Let me try to build one from scratch. Let's say my weakness is that I sometimes focus too much on small details, and I can lose sight of the bigger picture on a project.
A classic perfectionist weakness. How would you frame it using this model?
Okay, so I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist. I would be more specific and honest. I would say, one area I actively manage is my tendency to get drawn too deep into the details of a project, which can sometimes risk slowing down momentum. That feels honest. It doesn't feel like a fake strength. It feels like a real problem.
Good. That's a very candid statement. It feels real. Now, what's your system? How do you mitigate that?
My system, right. I need something proactive and tangible. So I'd continue by saying, to keep myself focused on the bigger picture, I use a simple system. At the start of every week, I write the top 1 or 2 strategic goals for my projects on a sticky note and put it on my monitor. Before I start any deep work, I look at that note and ask myself, how does this task serve the main goal? This helps me prioritize and not get lost.
How does that feel to you?
It feels strong. It doesn't feel like I'm making an excuse. It feels like I'm explaining how I work, how I manage myself. It makes the weakness feel almost irrelevant.
Because it is irrelevant. The interviewer doesn't remember the weakness. They remember the story of self-management. They remember the sticky note. They remember the process. They remember a candidate who is not afraid to be vulnerable because they have built systems to be strong.
So all this time, I thought the question was about finding the perfect flaw to share, but it was never about the flaw at all. It's a character question.
It always is.
They're not asking, what is your weakness? They're asking, show me how you grow.
And now you know how to answer.
It's not about what's wrong with me. It's about what's right with how I deal with what's wrong. That's a completely different way of thinking.
It is.
The weakness doesn't define me. The way I respond to it does.